we're gonna make this transmission work again, one way or another. It's just gonna require some parts.
Well, it looks like I am in a bad spot, guys.
Oh. All right, it's a new day in the shop. It's actually the morning after. Hang on a minute. All right, so it's a new day in the shop. It's actually the morning after my last video upload. So
It's time we get this thing tore apart.
You guys, if you watched the last video, you remember me saying I'm not gonna worry about the rest of the synchros. I'm just gonna worry about this one. But I lied because I actually put the 5th gear synchro and the 2nd gear synchro in the wrong spots. So I'll swap those, or obviously I have the new ones. But I'm gonna pull all the synchros off and replace them with the new ones. I really want to get this tore apart. I used a screwdriver and I was able to break this one free. I wasn't too worried about damaging it because it's already damaged. But my current concern is that the 1st gear cone here might be a little damaged. It feels pretty good right now, but I was thinking about it last night in bed, and I have to tear it apart as soon as possible to find out. It's just gonna eat me alive if I don't. I'm kind of hoping that it was just that these synchros were a little too open, and that the new ones are gonna just fit a little tighter and not go all the way up against the face of the gear like that. I mean, obviously this one is worn pretty bad. But yeah, so let's get it tore apart. We'll get all the rods and shift forks off, and then we gotta start removing these clips, which usually go flying. So hopefully that all goes well. And then this nut's gotta come off. We gotta press some stuff off the back before we can get things out the front. It's a little bit of a process, but I'll take you guys along so you know how to do it if you want to tackle this project on your own one day or whatever. All right, so as I mentioned last time, there's detent balls behind each one of these with springs. I'm gonna go ahead and get those out. Probably gonna break these free first, actually, and then I'll get those out. All right, so all the shift forks are loose, but obviously they can't come off because they're on the hubs. So the rods have to come out. As you can tell by these clips, it's gonna go out that way. So we gotta get the clips off and get the detent balls out. This top one should be held in by this guy, but let's go ahead and get this clip off first. And that's always a good time. All right, it's kind of hard to find camera angles, so hopefully you guys can see enough to understand. But I've got this guy on each side of the snap ring here, on each leg of it. I'm just gonna tap it down. And you wanna be careful because like I said, you can send this thing into freaking orbit. But if you're careful, it'll just pop right off. I'm gonna get a magnetic tray. Putting all the internal clips and stuff inside there. So then there's also one on this lower shaft here. What'd I do with my stuff? So we'll get this oriented to where we can do the same process of just putting this on. Oh. That one went flying, and I heard it come over here, so let me look for that. It's somewhere on the ground. Hopefully when you're taking these off, you have good hearing, because when it goes, you gotta listen for where it went. And I was able to find that one, actually right after I shut that camera off, so. All right, let's get this top shaft out of here. And so for that, we're gonna take off this upper detent cap, preload deal, whatever you wanna call it. So just like that one we took off the side the other day, we've got the cap, we've got the spring, and I'm gonna need a different magnet. Underneath the spring, we'll have the detent ball. And some of these are gonna be different shaped. And you'll be able to tell because of the distances. But all these outside ones should be just the normal round ball bearing type. So I'll throw that there. And this should be able to, alright, sorry about that. I heard my dog whining outside, wanted to check on him. So yeah, this guy, now that this detent ball is out, we can tap it and it'll come past, there should be a detent ball in between here and there. So we'll take this out. The shift fork will become free. You could take that off. And then you could finish fishing this rod all the way through. And be mindful that there is the detent ball right below that. So keeping track of this, this is the 3/4 shift rod. And so you know it's the one right in the middle. There's no edges. So just keep track of that, where that went. So you're not fishing different things. I took pictures, and obviously I have the video. But as you're pulling it apart, just take pictures so you remember where things went. Makes it so much easier. But yeah, if you look inside here, you can see, hopefully, there's a little ball there. And it actually sits in between, I was mistaken, it sits between this rod and the top rod. So, we could actually probably just get that out now with a magnet. Let's see. Yeah, all right, see how that one's pill shaped? It's all a matter of distances. So you see there's more distance there than what you would need for the normal round ones. And so we know the pill shaped one goes in between those two shift rods. So I think we should be able to do the same thing now with the 1/2 shift rod. Get the shift fork out of the way, set it to the side. Now we already have that detent ball pill out. There's gonna be another one in here though. So we wanna go slowly so we can pay attention to where they come from. Like that. So we know, well actually, I'm just being an idiot. This is the detent ball for this guy. I forgot I haven't taken all these out yet. So if you, some of you have done this before and you were like, hey, you're an idiot. That's all right. So this would have been the cap, the spring, and then that ball that came shooting out of there is the one that goes on the end of this. And that's just a normal round ball, just like all the side ones should be. So with that, let's get the rest of these out of here. These little side detents. So all the caps are the same. You don't got to worry about those. You guys just went for a ride. And all these springs should be the same. You can always hold them beside each other and check. And then from the outside, these guys, they should all have the same round ball. That one's just a normal round ball. That one's just a normal round ball. So those we can't screw up. Just the pill-shaped ones, you want to pay attention to where they actually went. So now I think this rod comes out the front. And we can get this guy out. I didn't pull it all the way out because I'm pretty sure there's more stuff in the way. Yep, okay. Like I said, I'm doing this from one-time memory. So kind of bear with me. I'm definitely not an expert with these transmissions. You guys probably figured that out by now though. Alright, so this 12 mil will hold this reverse shaft. Pull that off real quick. So that guy comes off. This just bolts to the sandwich plate. And that controls our reverse, obviously. All right, I'm starting to remember things, I think.
All right, so I'm kind of spacing on the order of which this goes. So I'm going to show you probably the wrong way to do it. But you can see this notch here. That guy sits in there. So that means there's another detent pill right in here. So as I pull this out, boom, that guy fell. So that one's just a ball. Okay, so we know the ball, there's a ball that goes in here. But this way we can get this rod out. That's the 5th gear shift rod. And then this guy, where did that one go and come from? Okay, so this guy was sitting in between these two, I believe. Nope. Alright, so as I pulled that out, this guy fell out. And that's just because I was spacing on that too. There's a detent ball that sits in here as well, in between these two rods. Basically, between almost all these rods, there's a freaking detent ball. So just keep track of those. Like I say, most of them are the same, but there will be a couple pill ones. So now this swings the reverse arm out of the way. So this arm is free, and this should be able to just slide out, yep. So this guy slides out, everything's happy there. Excuse me. So there's another detent ball right there. Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way before it goes falling. This should be another pill-shaped one. And like I say, you can tell by just looking at the distances. It's a short distance here, so it's going to take a ball. It's a long distance here, so it's going to take one of the elongated pill-style ones. So, just an easy way to tell that. So now the only thing holding this rod in right now is this clip. Honestly, I probably don't have to pull that, but at the same time, it'll probably make it easier for getting the detent ball in later. But not sure if I actually want to worry about pulling that clip. I think I'm gonna try and leave this in for now, and then I'll probably hate myself later for trying to keep that ball in while putting the rod through.
Alright, so another thing I should mention is you can find the Toyota Service Repair Manual, or TSRM, I think that's what it stands for these R154 transmissions, and it tells you exactly all your clearances, what you need to check, and how to pull it apart a lot better than what I can do. So check on that. This will just kind of give you, I don't know, a visual representation of a regular dude doing this. So next step, we gotta get the speedometer and ABS speed gear guy off. And that's another 2 of these clips that like to go flying. So yeah, I'm gonna use the same method, maybe actually 2 screwdrivers because this one's open a little wider. And we gotta pop this clip off, slide this off, we can get this clip off, and then excuse me, continue pulling this apart. Alright, I dug out 2 similar length screwdrivers. So I'm gonna put one here, and then just tap on the top with a hammer. I'm gonna have to set you guys up over here, so you're probably not gonna see it very well. Once again, be listening, because there's a good chance this clip is just gonna go flying. If you do it carefully enough, which never seems to work out, you can get it popped off just enough to where you can actually get a screwdriver underneath it. And then with your screwdriver underneath it, you can put your hand there and actually catch the pin. I'm actually amazed that worked, or the clip. Actually kind of amazed that worked as well as it did, because that never happens. So this guy then slides off. This is your speedometer gear / ABS speed sensor gear. So then there's the clip behind it that you gotta do the same thing with. Let's see if I can do it as well. Usually never works twice. All right, it actually did. Oh, it still went flying. And so did something else. All right, so beware when you slide, and this is totally just my bad. When you slide the speedometer gear off, this little tiny ball bearing actually sits right up in here. And that's what keeps this guy from spinning. You can see the little notch on it. So when you pull this off, make sure you get the little ball bearing out. When I popped this off, this was the second piece that fell, and I'm actually amazed I found it, especially not knowing what actually fell out. So, learn from my mistakes, don't do that. So now, before this bearing, there is also another snap ring. So we're gonna try and pop that one out. This one seems like it's got a lot of tension, so I'm just gonna grab a rag to kind of cushion it as it comes off. And there we have that. This one is a different thickness, so pay attention to that as it's coming off. The two for the speedometer gear were much thinner than the thick one for the bearing here. All right, so it took me a while. I didn't bore you guys, but I set up this bearing puller in a less than ideal way. But so to pull this guy off, obviously I'm gonna press against the shaft and pull on the bearing. Excuse me. If you're reusing the bearing, you want to make sure you're pressing on this inner piece here. It's kind of hard to get it because you got this adjuster sleeve, but you can tighten this down and it should just press right up against the inner bearing and pull it out. So I'm going to tighten this guy and hopefully it runs right off. All right, so what was happening was this guy was actually threading into here. No bueno. So I put a nut there to kind of space it. And now we got that bearing right off. Pressing this apart with the puller like this is honestly the worst part of the job. Once you get this part off and you can get the front out the front, in my opinion, it's a lot better. And then you can just put it in the press and do all that. This part kind of stresses me out, but I mean, as long as you're not an idiot, you can do it. Heck, even if you are an idiot, you can do it. All right, and then this is just a spacer. It goes between the bearing and fifth gear here. So we'll pull that off. Now the next part is to get this. This is a locked nut right here that you pop into here. We gotta get this nut off, and that'll get us our fifth gear hub off. According to the TSRM, you want to measure the thrust here, so when you go back together, you match it. Or if it's too much here, you can tighten it down and get it lesser. But yeah, so let's get this nut off, and then we can get the fifth gear hub off. So this guy here is kind of big. It's a 32 millimeter. So I have that set up on this impact. And I'm just gonna run it off. All right, so I got that broke loose, so I can run it off the rest of the way by hand. There we go. Now I believe I need a puller again to actually get onto these little guys and pull the fifth gear off. All right, I was able to find a couple bolts that thread into there. Then I got the puller set up. So now this guy can pull right off. All right, so once you press this guy off, or pull this guy off, this is the part that's pressed on there. This should all just slide right off. Just like that. All right, I just had to look it up just to be sure. That is supposed to be a two-piece bearing in there. So I thought it might be broken, but no, that's how it is. So this is how this comes apart. I like to lay things out in the way they came off just so I know how they go back together. Obviously, like I said earlier, I put the second gear synchro in the fifth gear synchro spot and the fifth gear synchro in the second gear synchro spot, or third gear. So that's going to be changed, but it worked anyways, but it's obviously just not right. So now that that's done, there's a thrust washer here, and there should be a little ball.
See how there's a little notch there? So let me set this down real quick and grab the magnet. So there's a little ball for that thrust washer, and it goes right in the shaft there. So we'll keep all that together. So now the next step is removing this bearing retainer plate. And it also retains the reverse shaft, or the, reverse idle shaft, whatever guy, reverse gear shaft. So remove these 4 bolts and this plate will come off, and you'll be able to remove the shaft, the idler shaft for the reverse gear. Set you guys up here for now. So this particular bearing retainer is the upgraded HD bearing retainer. So pull this guy off, and you'll kind of have to twist and pull for the reverse gear idler. But then the reverse gear idler should push right out the front, and I'm just going to keep the gear itself on it, just so I remember the direction and everything, how that went. Pretty self-explanatory when you're getting it apart, but always good to just pay attention to how it went and keep it how it went. So now there's more super fun retainer rings. These guys aren't actually as bad. These you just snap ring plier off, but then the shafts will slide out the front. It's kind of, from what I remember, kind of a little bit of they have to come out somewhat together, because you can't slide the counter shaft off because of this bearing, unless you got that bearing out of the way. But even then it would hit this hub. So it's kind of both out at the same time type of deal. I don't think you can get the... I'm going to try and just pull the top, but from what I remember, you can't do that. Alright, so I got the snap ring out for the top bearing here. So yeah, there's just not enough. We hit second gear to third gear on the counter shaft. So you do actually have to pull both shafts, kind of work it out. So I'm going to get this other snap ring off real quick. So now both of these are able to slide out of the sandwich plate. So you pull the upper one out a little bit. Crap, I can't even remember. So you pull the upper shaft out a little bit, and you can get the lower shaft out, and it just slides out of the bearing right here. Now this whole upper shaft comes right off, just like so. All right, I've already made a mess of tools and everything already, and the GoPro's covered in gear oil, so that's nice. But yeah, so this is our input shaft, output shaft. It all goes together here. This is our counter shaft. So the input actually, once you get it apart, will slide right off of the rest of it, just like so. And so one thing to know is the synchros are in matching sets. 3 and 4 are going to be the same. 1 and 2 are going to be the same, and 5th gear is going to be its own separate one. They don't ever come marked, or like any instructions for many of the sets I've got, but the way you can tell is mostly outer diameter. So 3 and 4 are going to be a bigger outer diameter. Or well, these are 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are going to be a big diameter. 3 and 4 are going to be a smaller diameter. And 5th gear is going to be about the same as 3 and 4. So then the next thing you want to look at is they're going to be a matching set. So see how 5th gear has kind of like a house shape on the synchro? And then these guys have a little bit like just kind of an asymmetric shape there. So then the next thing you want to look at is they're going to be a matching set. So see how 5th gear has kind of like a house shape on the synchro? And And then these guys have a little bit like just kind of an asymmetric shape there. But that's how you kind of tell. They come in, they're pairs. So these two are going to be the same, matching if you line them up. These two are going to be the same, matching if you line them up. And then 50 is its own thing. Obviously reverse isn't synchronized. So anyways, now that this is apart, you gotta get this snap ring off, and this 3/4 hub will come off, and then you can get to that, I believe. So this should be split right in there. That should be front half and rear half of the output shaft. So really, to change the synchro, since I've already done all the bearings and everything, all the bearings are new, I just have to pull this hub off and then change the synchro. From what I remember, you pull this off and it's obviously pressed off. But if you have new synchros, you can kind of use this synchro as a sacrificial one and put your bearing knife in there and pull it off from there. Alright, so I put the output shaft in the press. The TSRM tells you to press off first gear, the bearing, thrust washer, and fifth gear all at once. Just because you can't really get anything in between fifth gear and the bearing to press it off without potentially damaging. But I have some pressure on it now, and it's bending my metal. So I don't want to go any farther because it'll put pressure on some of the teeth separately than the others, and it could break a tooth. So I have some pressure on it, and I'm going to put some heat to the fifth gear, and hopefully it loosens it up enough to move it. Alright, that still wasn't working, so I found my better bearing knife and also added more heat to the fifth gear here. I remember last time this was a pain in the butt, but hopefully this time it'll actually press off. And I'm actually going to close this because I'm kind of a sissy when it comes to the press. And it's still taking a lot of force, so please hold. Alright, so since I'm a little bit of a chicken and I really didn't like how much force it was taking to do all that, I found a way to, and I know you can probably kind of see it's not perfectly level, but it already broke free. So I was able to get just fifth gear, and now it's pressing out. So now I'm a lot less stressed about it because the rest of it will come off much easier. I'm gonna set you guys here. I'm not sure how much you'll be able to see, but when you're pressing, you also want to be aware that it's gonna come out the bottom. And you don't want your whole output shaft and all your gears to fall onto the ground. So we'll continue pressing off fifth gear here. And there we have it. Fifth gear has come off here. I think that's still quite warm. So yeah, there's fifth gear. Fifth gear is now off. And now it should be a lot easier to press off first gear and this bearing. Alright, so I have it all reset up under first gear, and we'll start pressing. Close this door again. Okay, I had to put on a brave face for this one, but it did eventually break free. So same thing with fifth gear. Sorry, I've got to set you kind of low. I don't have a good setup here, but keep your hand underneath it so everything doesn't fall off. And there you go. So underneath here, you have a thrust washer, which is for some reason stuck to the bearing. But that thrust washer, let's move this over to a bench. Well, it looks like I am in a bad spot, guys. Let me get these out of the way real quick. These are just the first gear bearings. So if we look right here where the bearing rides and that thrust washer that I said was stuck to the bearing, we have some bad carnage somehow. So this thrust washer has this little ball recess here, and you can see that ball is now ground into this output shaft. So if I'm not mistaken, this output shaft is junk at this point. Crap. Well, all right, let's look at what I was looking at before. Not that I don't think it's gonna matter anymore. But so here's that synchro. Really doesn't look too bad. But if you look, it sinks down all the way onto here. So with the new one, just for fun, let's see how it sits on there. And it actually has some gap. But like I say, I don't know how much it's gonna matter because my output shaft is screwed. Oh, the joys. So I've been thinking about it a little while. I got this bearing off here. It actually like has this thrust washer. It actually has a piece of the bearing just welded to it. So I'm thinking when I put this thing together, I didn't get a proper reading or didn't have proper thrust clearance on the thrust washer to first gear. So I think I cooked this thing. I mean, the output shaft is definitely bad. First gear is bad. 1-2 hub is bad. Thrust washer is bad. This bearing's bad. So now I get to decide what I'm gonna do. And I'm not super stoked on my findings today. I'm not really sure what to do about this video. I'm not sure if I'll just fast forward through all the taking it apart or what, but yeah, this really puts a damper on things. Not sure what I'm gonna do. I might have to, I don't know, sell something. Sell one of the backyard cars or something and either make this, see if I can make this a dog engagement box still or buy a whole different box altogether. But I guess I'll just end the video here. I don't know if you guys will see this. Maybe I'll put it as a video anyways, but yeah, thanks for watching. I'm gonna go cry, do a bunch of research, figure out what I'm gonna do. And catch you guys in the next one. I didn't like how I ended that off. I was in a really down state. So everything's still tore apart. Everything's still a mess. I haven't done a whole lot here. But I looked at that output shaft again and I was like, this might actually be salvageable. Are we dirty again? So I took that output shaft to my machinist. I was like, hey, can we get this pin out? Can we take the high spots off this surface? I'm not too worried about the low spots because that's a press-on fit anyways, and there's tons of bearing space for that. And he's like, yeah, but getting this pin out is probably better. I don't have a TIG machine to find someone who could TIG. And I was like, well, I could TIG. So I'll insert those clips here. All right, so I was talking with my machinist because I think, well, this is actually repairable or salvageable at least. But he said he didn't want to get this pin out because what he had might not work. So he's like, if you know someone good with TIG, have them try and weld do it and pull it out. So that gave me the idea of I have these short pieces of tungsten from doing the roll cage that I'm just gonna try and melt the tungsten right into that pin and wiggle it out. So we'll see how that goes. All right, I got the tungsten welded to it. Oh my gosh. It's wiggling, I just gotta get it worked out. Oh, it broke off. All right, well, I don't know if I missed all that, but let me try again. And that right there is what success looks like. I just kept the tungsten in the torch this time to pull it out because I had to re-weld it a couple times. Focus. Took it back to him and he was able to put it on the crankshaft polisher and clean her up. He filed down the high spots. Obviously we still have some gouging and stuff, but that's just not enough to worry about. Like I say, with the bearing that presses on, it presses all the way on to like here to where my fingernail is. And then the thrust washer is fat enough to not be affected by these here. But the pin is out. It's all polished up. So that output shaft, sorry, you might have been really close to my face there. That output shaft is salvageable. So now I've got to decide what to do with the rest of it. And I think I've made that decision. I sent some money over to get some things and hopefully that comes through and it wasn't some scam or something. It's always my fear when I send a bunch of money somewhere. But we're gonna make this transmission work again, one way or another. It's just gonna require some parts. Luckily parts are available and I saved that output shaft. So this was kind of a long video that ended in a bummer, but we'll come out of it. All right, thanks for watching guys. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever, and see you in the next one.